Urban Bowhunting. The Guide to Hunting Small Properties for Big Game. By Dustin Von Warnke. The Case for Urban Hunting. I started hunting urban properties several years ago for many reasons. For one, I had watched several friends and family members leave their family to go hunting for weekends or even weeks at a time, leaving their significant others as deer widows. For me, family has always been important, and balancing a busy life of raising kids, investing in my marriage, working hard at my career, and generally keeping the home fires burning have always been some major goals of mine. Although there is nothing wrong with going on a week-long whitetail deer, mule deer, or elk hunting trip, or on a weekend trip to hunting camp, it sure is nice to hunt closer to home when and where possible. Convenience is yet another reason I like hunting closer to civilization. Two of my urban deer stands are less than 15 minutes away from my house in the northwest suburbs of Austin in central Texas. Furthermore, in my day job at the time of writing this book, the fall deer season is my busiest time of the year for my work schedule, so hunting close to home became a necessity for me. I didn't see my wife or son much during the week, so weekends became important for family time. Many people, both hunters and non-hunters, ask me how I can hunt areas so close to civilization. It almost seems unnatural to them. Hunters are usually intrigued and want to learn more. Non-hunters typically have a confused look on their face. This brings up another good reason to hunt urban areas that is often overlooked by many die-hard hunters. Some of the best opportunities of putting the hammer down on a trophy buck or other big game animal are not far away from home. As a testament to that point, some of the best deer I have harvested in the last few years have come from one of my urban hunting spots. Urban deer are typically used to people, vehicles, and other parts of urban and suburban life, making them less likely to spook. Additionally, many urban properties are overpopulated with deer or other wildlife. In other words, there are ample opportunities with low pressure areas that can produce a high payoff for the hunter who goes where others dare not to tread. Between the abundance of food, flower beds, gardens, and more, and the absence of natural predators, deer and other game populations tend to flourish in urban areas. Each year, many deer populations have die-offs due to overpopulation and limited resources. Starvation is the leading cause of death in many of these cases. There is also a general concern about road safety, and we all know that there is no winner in a deer-vehicle collision. For that reason and others, most of the landowners I work with have a vested interest in controlling deer herd populations, but the same is true for areas that have a feral hog population problem. Feral hog devastation is a common issue in Texas as well as through many different parts of the United States, and the cost to landowners dealing with this problem is staggering. Each year, billions upon billions of dollars are lost due to feral hog activity in and around farm crops, lawns, golf courses, and other properties. In Texas alone, the cost of feral hog damage is around $52 billion per year. This is another good case for urban bow hunting. After all, hunting is one of the best and most effective methods for controlling predation issues as well as general overpopulation issues. Although close to city dwellers, many of which do not understand the reasons, motives, or passion of hunters, urban hunting is an effective solution to many problems landowners face today. As I mentioned above, for the hunter, the payoff can be great in many ways. Urban bow hunting for deer and other game has been made popular through hunting shows and even some shows in the reality TV realm on major TV networks. One of my favorite outdoor TV shows is Deer City USA, hosted by Steve Gruber. I met Steve at the SHOT Show in Las Vegas when I was there as part of another TV show a couple of years ago. Deer City USA was one of the inspirations for me to start out hunting deer in urban areas. Another show on the History Channel, Chasing Tail, follows several hunters on their quest to hunt suburban areas in Connecticut for deer, including golf courses and homeowners' yards. It is no secret that many urban and suburban areas, such as large acreage subdivisions, are overpopulated with deer or other animals, and many landowners are happy to have respectful hunters take some of these animals off their property. Add to that the fact that many homeowners consider deer and other game a nuisance and pest as they graze on expensive landscaping, and you have a great combination. As a hunter, you are participating as the dominant predator in the ecosystem while also ensuring the health of the wildlife herd in that area. You are providing a community service to the area you are hunting. The way hunting is today. It goes without saying that hunting can be an expensive sport compared to other outdoor pursuits. There was a time in years past when bartering and trading your time and services for land to hunt on was a common way to find hunting opportunities throughout the country. Just knock on a few doors and you are in. With the advent of game hunting ranches, hunting leases, and other valuable hunting real estate in our country, many hunters have given up the quest to find low-cost or no-cost hunting land, thinking it's just not out there. Now, there are certainly abundant public or government land opportunities available in many states. I personally started my adult hunting career on a large military base which opened up land for hunting and fishing for just $100 per year. One of the main drawbacks of hunting this way is that you have to share this land with other hunters, and it sometimes becomes hard to pattern and set up on game when you are on land which you don't have exclusive access. In other words, it's hard to do things like set up tree stands or ground blinds, plant food plots, set up corn or protein feeders and more on properties like these. You can always buy or lease your hunting property, but the cost, time commitment, and other responsibilities with this leave many hunters leaving the sport of hunting completely. In Texas, for instance, a good piece of hunting land starts out at about $2,500 per season for a lease, if you're lucky. Keep in mind that this doesn't include any of your gear, feed, seed for food plots, stands, blinds, and other equipment. You are just paying for the land to hunt on and the right to access it whenever you desire. When I started venturing out on my own to find hunting land, I too was almost driven out of the market due to the cost. At that time, I simply couldn't afford to pay those kinds of prices. So, like most things in life, I figured out a better way of doing things. If urban hunting was easy, everyone would already be doing it. Therefore, finding low-pressure hunting land close to home can be challenging but worth it in the long run. Our culture seems to be set on money being the primary way transactions take place. Although barter and trade is an old system, it still works. I see many of my hunting buddies shelling out thousands of dollars for hunting each year while my costs for hunting are minimal. You have to be creative, but hunting does not have to be a cost-prohibitive sport if you can learn to think outside the box. We will explore some of those ideas in this book. White-tailed deer and wild hogs are some of the most adaptive of all of the animals you can hunt today in North America. They have learned to survive and thrive in a broad range of habitats, including urban and suburban areas. Once considered animals of the deep forest, deer, for instance, now abound in small woodlots, thickets and gullies in the middle of town. In forest and farmland areas, deer usually get plenty hunting pressure, and most bucks are harvested before they hit maturity and achieve peak body size and antler development. But there is little pressure on in-town deer. Urban hunting presents hunters with a unique opportunity. Those who understand this situation and who plan a strategy can have some prime hunting opportunities virtually to themselves. Now, sitting on a stand close to a busy highway, a bustling subdivision or a construction site may not be as aesthetically pleasing as watching a trail in the middle of the woods, but the heightened anticipation of having a chance at a real trophy buck more than makes up for the detractions of hunting near the city. In this book, we will explore some different hunting opportunities and ideas to help you secure land to hunt on and build relationships with landowners, game wardens, and others. I have years of experience in urban hunting, and I have had just about every situation, as comical as it might be, happen to me over the years. In fact, the idea for this book came from an article I wrote for Texas Fish and Game magazine entitled, Urban Bowhunting, Backyard Backstraps. You can trust that the suggestions I present will yield results. Thank you for purchasing this resource. I hope you have as much fun reading it as much as I did writing it. Finding areas to hunt. Before you start prospecting areas to hunt, check with your local game warden and research city and county ordinances to make sure that hunting is legal in the area. Try to prospect for hunting areas just outside the city limits if possible, as many cities do not allow hunting within the boundaries of the city limits. The cities that do permit hunting usually have hunting programs set up. More on that later. Private lands and scouting with the cold call approach. Private lands are the gems inside and outside the city limits of large and densely wooded lots, or even far more developed property, that are ideal for hunting. The owner of such property might be an individual landowner, a neighborhood association, or even a corporation. You need the permission of the landowner or land manager to hunt these areas. This is the tricky part because granting you permission might be construed as accepting liability for your actions. This is where the rubber meets the road as a hunter. You have a fine line to walk if you get permission to hunt on private property. You are indeed on the landowner's watch and are his or her liability when you are on their property. For this reason, you have to establish respect and trust in the relationship almost immediately in order to gain permission to come back over and over again. To prospect a potential hunting area, start by driving around areas with large acreages and low fences. You want to make sure deer can access you and you can easily track deer, so I target 5-acre or larger parcels of land. Sometimes you can get away with smaller properties, as one of the areas I hunt is less than 2 acres. As a rule though, the fewer landowners you have to involve in hunting and tracking your game after the shot, the better. We will soon talk about networking and relationships once you gain access to hunting land. If you find a good area but don't know any landowners in the area at all, this is where cold calling comes into play. One of the best things you can do is drive around and scout for areas supporting a deer population. You never want to come off as a hunting land stalker or some sort of criminal casing an area for later, so I recommend driving in a car or SUV or something other than your favorite hunting truck full of stickers promoting the sport on the back window. Now I am as guilty as anyone of having a hunting-themed vehicle, as my main vehicle is full of stickers and decals on the back window promoting all of the organizations I belong to and companies I hold pro-staff positions with in the outdoor industry. Since my wife is not a hunter, but drives a truck, I usually take her vehicle on these scouting expeditions to look as low-key as possible. You want to look as professional as possible but stop short of looking like a Bible salesman. You don't want to come off as that guy after all. When making this approach, I always dress in nice clothes instead of my normal camouflage hunting gear. You want to put your best foot forward when meeting people and present yourself as professional and as respectful as possible. You want to appear as a pillar in the community. I would even recommend going with a hunting buddy for backup if you don't have the courage to meet with and talk to new people you have never met before on your own. This is especially a good idea if meeting with people for the first time about hunting on or having access to their property is not your strongest skill. Since I am in outside sales for a living, meeting new people comes naturally to me, but I understand that it's not everyone's cup of tea. Again, you are going where many other hunters don't think about going, so proceed on this journey boldly. Plan a Saturday sometime before deer season, maybe in the summer months before season begins, and knock on a few doors. What you are simply asking is if homeowners would allow you place a hunting setup on the back part, in most cases, of their property and hunt a couple to a few months out of the year, depending on your state. In return, offer some of the meat you harvest or to bring some processed meat to give back them in trade. If they do not care for venison, offer to make a meat donation to a charitable organization like Hunters for the Hungry on their behalf. This usually makes landowners feel like they are doing a good service for someone else by allowing hunting on their land. It is also hard to argue against something like urban hunting when the meat is going to feed those in need in the surrounding area. You could also offer to help with lawn care or other house duties if needed. There is nothing wrong with barter and trade of your time for permission to hunt a property. Remember that landowner is taking a risk of your liability for you to be there. If you hurt yourself or accidentally damage any of his or her property, it all becomes the landowner's problem by law. Keep this in mind as you approach these prospective opportunities. The key to hunting in urban areas is to anchor in one area where you will be doing the bulk of your hunting and then make your acquaintance with neighboring landowners so you can access their land if and when needed to recover a downed animal. You can even set up multiple stands and game cameras in a given area if you are able to gain the trust and respect of multiple landowners. How do you know how far to go out connecting with landowners in an area and gaining permission to access land? I try to figure about a 100 to 150 yard parameter from your hunting area for tracking and recovery of wild game. Even if it's further than this, it still is worth a visit or phone call to a neighboring landowner. In my urban bow hunting experience, I have had very few deer run over 100 yards if the shot placement was good using the equipment I use. I will go more into what gear I use and how I use it later in the book. Government areas. There are many other places to find hunting opportunities on the cheap aside from private urban land, you just have to be on the lookout for them. As I mentioned before, one of the places I started hunting early in my hunting career was military property that had areas designated for hunting when military training wasn't in progress. In this case it was Fort Hood Army Base in Central Texas and their hunt control program. Although not as ideal and flexible as private hunting land, the barrier to entry is pretty low to get a permit to hunt these areas, even as a civilian. If you have a military base or other government property near you, see if they have a hunting program and explore some possibilities. You must follow the rules, and there are plenty of them, but hunting is usually good if you scout these areas well. Conservation/wildlife management areas. Here in Texas, we have WMAs, or wildlife management areas, which are conservation areas managed by Texas Parks and Wildlife, our state authority governing the rules on our fish and game. Some of these WMAs have areas designated for hunting season for deer, wild hogs, and other game. WMAs are managed much like public land hunts but are more restrictive on when and where hunts take place. I know of many hunters who have had success hunting areas such as these for different wildlife. Look for opportunities like these as well as general public land opportunities in your area. Although more restrictive than private land hunting, you can do well hunting these areas if you do good scouting and hunt hard. Municipal/city limits hunting areas. Another place to look for hunting opportunities is local municipalities that have had or are currently having overpopulation or predation issues with wild game. Many times a city council or other governing bodies may elect to hire a group of hunters or enlist the help of local hunters by setting up a hunting program to take care of an issue. Opportunities like this can be a little more challenging to find, but they are out there. Hunters usually need to apply to hunt urban areas under hunt programs as well as show proficiency in bow hunting. In some of these hunt programs, hunting is restricted to compound bow hunting only, although I don't see the case for banning the use of crossbows. Some of these areas also have restrictions on only using tree stands or elevated hunting stands, so all shots are aimed down at the ground. In my research, hunting areas like these are usually directly supervised by governing wildlife agencies or even local area governing bodies. One example of this was a wild hog devastation issue on one of the local golf courses near where I live. The authorities governing this area used urban hunting as a solution to the problem. In another example, it was the property development company governing the hunting access. This was a large acreage subdivision that was severely overpopulated with deer. The property development company opened tracts of undeveloped land close to where the homeowners lived for hunters to deer hunt on for a small fee of $60 per hunter. This is still a bargain price when you look at the cost of hunting in many areas. States such as Iowa, Ohio, Virginia, Arkansas, and others have cities conducting annual urban deer hunting programs, or some states now have an urban hunting season. As our urban areas increasingly spill over into what once were rural areas, we can expect to see more and more areas designated for urban hunting in the future. It's up to you, however, to research and find these opportunities near you. Pre-development sites. One often overlooked area to scout for hunting opportunities are pre-development sites. Many appealing tracts of land are held by a home builder or land developer for years before they're cleared and built upon. Most of these areas will become subdivisions or other densely populated areas in the future. In the meantime, however, the relatively undisturbed terrain makes an ideal habitat, drawing game in from all around. As a result, these areas are often great for hunting opportunities. Early in my adult hunting career, I was able to gain access for hunting small game with my archery equipment in an area about 10 minutes from my house that was a pre-development site. It broke my heart in a way to think that the future of this prime hunting area would one day displace game, but that's the way it goes with our society. Gaining permission to hunt areas like this can come from building a relationship with the company who holds the land or, more often than not, the person or people in charge of managing this land in its pre-development phase. Yes, this does take some networking and even a little bit of sales skill, but it is worth it. As the old saying goes, opportunities are never lost. Someone will always take the ones you miss. The key here again is to simply think about hunting closer to home than you have before and explore some new possibilities around you. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. Since many hunters don't even consider prospecting urban and suburban areas to hunt, you have a wider set of possibilities in your horizon. Take advantage of them. Venture out and explore some new possibilities near you. Prospecting land and building relationships. As a hunter, you have probably had the experience of waking up well before sunrise, driving an hour or more away, tromping through the woods, and crawling into a hunting stand only to not see one deer or any other game animal for that matter the entire day. I know I have. It's frustrating, but it is part of the game. Ironically, most of us have also had the experience of passing deer, turkey, wild hogs, or other wildlife in urban and suburban areas within shooting distance from our vehicles, sometimes even within the same day of not seeing anything on a hunt. As we have talked about so far, urban zones are often areas in dire need of wildlife management strategies. On the other side of the coin, these are also some of the most difficult places to get permission to hunt, thanks to overzealous county and city ordinances, animal rights enthusiasts, and other factors. Even though it can be challenging, whether you are a country boy or city boy, or girl, my goal in this book is to help you find more places to hunt closer to home and possibly even bag some trophy game in the process. I am going to showcase 2 examples of what I have done for making inroads with landowners on 2 different properties where I traditionally hunt each season. I call these stands, and others like them, city deer stands since they are urban and the main quarry I am after is deer. One of these stands sits on a 20-acre woodlot behind 2 houses, and another urban hunting setup sits directly behind a house against a greenbelt and an old creek that runs through central Texas. I must revisit another important point here. The overall out-of-pocket monetary cost to hunt any of my urban deer properties has been very little. Everything I have invested in the gear I use to hunt, and not tied up in the landowner's property. Sure, you can find urban property to lease for hunting, but it is more often than not that you will not owe the landowner anything but some of your time and service in return for the opportunity to hunt on the land. This is amazing to most Texas hunters, since most hunters who lease property will pay $2,500 or more per deer season for the chance to fill 3 to 5 whitetail deer tags. I can fill all of my tags with some sweat equity. I will explain this further as we move through this chapter. Large woodlots and large acreage homeowners' property. I gained access to the 20-acre woodlot through a connection I made at my local church. Most of the people at my church who know me know how much I love the outdoors. Networking was the key here, and I would say it is one of the biggest parts of securing any kind of land to hunt on. In this instance, I befriended the son-in-law of the landowner of this property, a middle-aged man who was just getting introduced to the basics of archery. He wanted to hunt the backside of this property but didn't know where to begin, since he had never hunted an area this small and knew little to nothing about bow hunting. He was a traditional gun hunter. The first thing I did was establish that this was a viable area to hunt. The landowner told me of multiple encounters he had with deer on and around the vicinity of this property. The obvious first step in scouting any area to hunt is to go where there are signs of a good deer population. There is no need to go further into scouting land where there is no evidence or testimony of that area holding deer in a regular pattern on a regular basis. Yes, you can always draw deer into an area through baiting, setting up food plots, setting out mineral licks, and more. But if there are very few deer on or around the area or an occasional deer that passes by from time to time, move your search to somewhere else for a better chance of success. The approach I took with this hunting property was to offer to help the landowner's son-in-law, who also went to church with us at the time, with practicing and refining his archery skills so he could hunt this land. I taught him the fundamentals of archery and made sure he had the right tools to get started bow hunting the right way. In the meantime, I made a deal with the landowner. For the purposes of this book, we will call him Mr. Nathan. The deal was that if he let me hunt the land, I would share the meat from the deer I harvested from his property. Mr. Nathan was not much of a bow hunter himself, but he loved venison and that was the key to his heart. Mr. Nathan even planted a patch of oats for me for a few seasons as a kind of micro-food plot as he was excited to have me hunting his property. The deer herd in this area were notorious for eating everything in sight. Mr. Nathan even had to build a high deer-proof fence around his garden. The relationship I had with Mr. Nathan is about the best relationship you can hope for in that the landowner is a willing and ready participant in the experience. You certainly can't find this kind of landowner everywhere you look, but it sure is nice when you do. Mr. Nathan encouraged and welcomed my activity on his property. This relationship may be hard to form at first, but once you get in, you're in. All you have to do is maintain and grow the relationship after establishing mutual trust and respect. My offer to mow the back part of the property, mend fences, or do other work on the land was my way of fostering and nurturing this relationship further. I wanted Mr. Nathan to welcome me back to his property season after season, and he did just that. This 20-acre woodlot is set back in a rural subdivision of other large acreage properties, with homeowners' houses being located in the front of each property in most cases. The next step was to analyze where I was going to hunt and where a deer would run after the shot. I had a neighboring property to the north and west of the area, so I knocked on both of these landowners' doors to make their acquaintance and let them know what I planned to do. If they weren't home, I made it a point to come back when they were. The only thing I was seeking was permission to access their property if I needed to retrieve a deer. One landowner gave me complete permission with no strings attached, while the other gave me his cell phone number and told me he needed me to call him before I accessed his property. As long as you follow a landowner's wishes, you will most likely stay in their good graces unless you cross them the wrong way or do something on their property they might frown upon. Trespassing or otherwise doing something on their property without their permission is a good way to get banned from there, and I have seen this happen to many hunters in areas with gorgeous trophy deer and other wildlife. Use common sense. Be respectful. You are a guest on their property after all and are at their mercy if you need to access their land to retrieve a deer. I have hunted this property for many years and taken several nice deer for the freezer. I have never had a problem on this property because I sought out to earn and keep the favor of the landowner and his surrounding landowner neighbors. I went above and beyond in offering my time and service in return for a spot to hunt. This is the way it should happen. Smaller hunting areas. Another one of my hunting spots looks like it is in the middle of the city by the landscape, but the property sits just outside of the city limits. That is what you want to look for in most cases. If you can find a wildlife hotspot outside of the city limits but still close to civilization, you can almost bet there aren't a ton of other hunters competing for a spot to hunt there. When I give a rough idea of where this deer stand is located, most people have a hard time believing I can pull off hunting in an area like this. But I do, and I do it very well. How urban are we talking about? There is a busy road and even a regional county park across from the creek from where I hunt, less than 100 yards away from my blind. There are the sounds of people running on the nearby hike and bike trail and kids playing on the ball fields every day I hunt there. The funniest part of all of this is that my hunting spot is tucked behind a greenbelt and hidden by the trees along the creek, so very few people know where I am hunting. The greenbelt area is relatively open and flat, and the property I hunt here backs up to the landowner's backyard. Many hunters might be afraid to hunt this close to other people, but I regularly fill my tags there every season. I gained access to this hunting property through a family friend of my father's. My dad lives in Oklahoma but would visit a friend when he came into town to visit me. The original landowner used to hunt but fell on hard times and had a health crisis, stage 4 cancer, in the time I knew him. Long story short was that I hunted his property for a couple of years before he finally had to move out to relocate to a less expensive home. Knowing that there would be new homeowners on his property, I built a relationship with his neighbor, a single elderly lady named Lorraine. She obviously lived by herself but was nice and sweet and gave me full access to her property without any strings attached. She didn't like deer meat, unlike her neighbor with whom I shared my meat on a regular basis. All she asked was that I make a monetary or meat donation to local elderly care organizations or a food bank in the area. This relationship was proof that you can build a relationship with a stranger, which she used to be, and earn their trust for life. You have to be willing to pay the cost for this, and I know of many hunters that wouldn't be willing to go the extra mile. What I did in return for Ms. Lorraine was offer to help her any way I could. I trimmed bushes, cut tree limbs off her roof, cut firewood, hauled trash, mowed, and did any other tasks she needed done. This green belt area was unlike anywhere else I have hunted. It was a deer mecca. The back part of the property that backed up to a creek had deer coming through to graze every evening like clockwork after all. I have filled many tags there over the years and continue to do so. It will be worth your time and investment if you find a property like this. Both of the examples above show the power of building relationships with landowners and offering to barter or trade your services for the hunting opportunities on their land. People have needs and sometimes they need help with meeting those needs. As I mentioned earlier, this process isn't necessarily easy, but it's worth it. You might have to proverbially turn over some stones to find the right hunting situation, but when you do, the effort usually pays off in many dividends. Being a proactive and respectful hunter on urban property. It goes without saying that you should use extreme care as a hunter on urban and suburban area property. However, with the experiences I have had with others hunters I have allowed to hunt my urban hotspots as guests, I think this area should be further explored for a bit. It's vitally important to treat every piece of property you are invited on as your own or as if it was your father's or grandfather's property. I have had a few experiences where this was not done and the consequences almost cost me my right to hunt that property. In one instance, a hunting buddy of mine shot a deer and, when he recovered it, he drug it across one of the landowner's driveways, leaving a long blood trail on the pavement. He thought nothing of it. I heard a different story from the landowner when I saw her next. Another time a hunting buddy strapped his deer to his hitch hauler and, in broad daylight, drove down the street, thinking nothing about how what he had on the back of his SUV looked to those around him. These are both examples of what happens when hunters are not considerate of their landowners, neighboring landowners, and the general public's view of hunters. I am not suggesting that we should hide what we do as hunters. We are indeed playing a vital part of the circle of life in the environment. However, I am very careful on how I conduct myself while hunting. I make it a point to be so respectful and in stealth mode when hunting that most of the landowners never even know I was there or even that I had harvested a deer on their property. I try to leave things how I find them, which is something most all of us were taught growing up. I cannot stress enough how much extra care must be used when hunting this close to civilization. Following the rules of the area you are hunting. Now, to the credit of our brotherhood of hunters in general, most of us are safe, ethical, respectful, and responsible. It is your responsibility as a hunter to know and follow all of the rules of the area you are hunting. Most of us know what these are in rural traditional hunting areas. However, as we all should know, there is an added complication of following local laws and ordinances in hunting urban areas. In my research, I have found that the bigger the city, the more ordinances you can expect to encounter. Many of these rules are published online and are easily searchable. In other cases, you will want to call your local authorities and make sure you are in compliance of the law. Here are a few relevant ordinances you might come across that apply to bow hunting in urban areas. Weapons ordinances. These are important, and hunting bows and crossbows are obviously considered weapons, and their use within the city limits is many times tightly regulated. Often they forbid shooting, 1. Near schools or public buildings, 2. In the general direction of a person, building, vehicle, and 3. Close to roads, highways, or public/private property. You might also have to register with or notify local police when and where you intend to hunt. It's better to be safe than sorry in this department. Hunting ordinances. It may simply be illegal to hunt deer or other wildlife in certain townships. Where it's allowed, they might stipulate when and where you can hunt, how you hunt, and what you do with the game you take. As I mentioned earlier, one city ordinance I uncovered when doing the research for this book requires you to hunt from a tree stand at least 10 feet up or higher, so that you're shooting toward the ground. Be aware of these rules so you are not in violation and can hunt with peace of mind, knowing that you are obeying all the rules in your area. Animal/game ordinances. Cities and counties often have laws that prevent hunters from upsetting or disturbing their citizens. For example, you often cannot, and generally should not, field dress a deer in view of the general public. In some cities you can't drive a vehicle with a dead animal in plain view, such as an open truck bed or strapped to the hood as many did years ago. Usually good common sense will protect you in this area. You never know who is watching, and we as hunters should always put our best image forward to the general public. In addition to these concerns, you might also have some other issues to deal with. A good example of this happened a couple of years ago on one of my hunting properties. I had a neighboring landowner who was an anti-hunting advocate. She wasn't a part of PETA or any other such animal rights organization, but she hated deer hunting and everything that had to do with the sport and heritage. When she saw that I was in the area, she would go out of her way to scare deer off of the neighboring land I was hunting on, and there was nothing I could do about it. I knew I would most likely never change her mind. That was not my duty. I simply tried to coexist with her. I would hunt the property where I did have permission during days and hours she wasn't home when and where possible. I made sure that the deer I did shoot were facing the opposite direction of her property, so when I shot them it was highly likely they would run the other direction away from ever coming close to her property. I hunted like this for years until she finally sold her house and moved. The new homeowners were much more open with me. This is a good example of what can happen in an urban hunting situation. You can choose to find another area to hunt, or you can make the choice to adapt and overcome the situation. I didn't have one deer that expired on her property when I hunted this area because I did everything in my control to make sure that was not the case. This is a testament to the fact that not every circumstance is ideal for us as hunters, but we have to make the most of what we have. On another one of my hunting properties, in a more rural area of large acreage properties, a neighboring landowner was nervous about letting me on his property for recovering deer I shot from the property I was hunting. He had issues with strangers on his property since he had people trespass on his property and steal from him in years past. Although I did everything in my power to make him feel at ease, he still insisted I call him on his cell phone and let him know when I was coming on the property and where I was going. He had game cameras posted all over his property due to the theft issues and reminded me every time I called that I was on camera. This was certainly understandable. I handled this situation with care as well, making sure to call him frequently when I had to access his property. It is hard to over-communicate with people like this. In my experience, landowners like this feel better when you reach out whenever possible and show them how grateful you are for the opportunity to access their property. As long as you are an effective communicator, you will usually be welcome. I make it a point to call before, during, and after I am on the property in cases like this. My point is simple. We never know who in the community is watching us as we go about our sport of hunting. In urban hunting, although you may not think it, the probability that your actions will be viewed by others are far more likely than being out on a deer lease, hunting ranch, or even rural public land with your hunting buddies. You have to be proactive on making the best impression in whatever you do in and around the area you are hunting, even when you think no one is watching. When the unexpected happens. When teaching others the basics of urban hunting, I cannot stress enough the importance of having a good relationship with your local game wardens and other local authorities. I know of many people in the hunting community that want nothing to do with law enforcement being in their hunting or fishing business, but, so long as you have nothing to hide, there is no reason not to have their phone number saved in your contact list on your phone and check in with them occasionally. Before each deer season, I call my local game wardens and let them know where I plan to hunt and what vehicle I will primarily be driving. That way, if the unexpected happens, you have a friendly authority that will most likely be on your side when and if you need him. I have had the unexpected happen to me a number of times. In one of these cases, I shot a deer that ran onto a neighboring property where I did not have the landowner's permission to access their land. A visit with the property owners was not a hard interaction as they understood what I was there to do. If I was ever to have an issue with a landowner not allowing me to access their property, my game warden has my back and has even agreed to drive out to meet me and retrieve the deer with me in such a case. Once again, this is where relationship building and communication do wonders in the realm of hunting in urban areas. The main point here is to expect that the unexpected will happen. If you hunt urban areas enough, it probably will. I am not ashamed to admit I have lost deer in urban areas due to a poor shot placement or other factors. You can't let these types of events get you down. Build a relationship with the game warden and other authorities of the counties you are hunting when and where possible, and never be afraid to reach out to them in circumstances like this. It is better to have someone like him on your side if things don't go as planned on a hunting adventure. In the cases that I have not been able to recover a deer on an urban property, and there have only been a couple of instances where this happened, my game warden is my first call. I want him on my side in the case he gets a call or complaint that a deer died on a neighboring property if there is nothing I can do to prevent that. Transporting harvested wildlife. As we are talking about in this chapter, one of the goals in any urban hunting situation should be to act low-key and not draw unwanted attention to what you are doing. This is one reason why I suggest hunters take their game home and field dress it on their own property instead of where they hunt. Once again, we should indeed be proud of being hunters and what we do for the environment, but we shouldn't parade it around in a way to influence others about what we are doing in a negative manner. I typically drive an SUV with a hitch hauler on the back for hauling equipment as well the animals I harvest. This is a much more visible area than, for instance, a truck bed would be, so I run a pretty covert operation when transporting harvested game. While it is not against the law to transport game in the open in my part of the state of Texas, I still want to keep dead deer or other animals out of view of the public, so I usually bring a tarp or large construction-grade trash bag to cover my dead game animals. Even if you are hauling dead animals in the bed of a truck, you should at least consider bringing something along to cover them from public view. Again, you never know who is watching and what they will think about what they see. The hunting setup and best practices. Your hunting setup should be low-key but effective and efficient for harvesting game on the property you have access to hunt. Tree stands, natural blinds, and pop-up blinds are my main preference as they seem to blend in with the property better than tripod stands or more permanent elevated or ground hunting blinds. One of the goals, as we have covered before, is that you don't want to advertise what you are doing in the area you hunt. I want to remain in stealth mode for a couple of reasons. For one, I don't want other hunters thinking they can come in and hunt my property, even though it would be illegal and a trespassing offense if they did so. I also don't want to risk any of my equipment being stolen. That happens more than you might think. Furthermore, I don't want to make the property I'm hunting an eyesore by cluttering it with hunting gear. Most people who will allow you to set up a hunting spot might not care what you do in the back part of their property for a hunting setup, but you must remember you are a guest there at all times. My personal ideal hunting setup is to anchor a pop-up ground blind about 20 yards from a feeder set to go off around dawn and dusk, or, if baiting not legal in your area, a small food plot. In Texas, feeders are part of many hunting setups. Baiting using corn feeders is one of the only ways you will see wild game where we hunt in many cases. Many hunters from other states, especially where baiting for game species is not legal, take issue with this. If you are one of them, I apologize if this method of hunting offends you. This is just the way we do it in most parts of the Lone Star State. Regardless of that, many hunters across the USA use some kind of attractant when stand hunting, be that a mineral lick, food plot, scent lure, etc. If you so choose, can always set your blind or stand along a trail or next to a natural food or water source. The basic rule of hunting, of course, is to hunt where your targeted game is going to be and hunt that area often. Here are some examples of a couple of my hunting setups. Large acreage woodlot setup. Feeder, blue/black, and water trough, black barrel, set about 20 yards away from the blind. The reason a water trough was set up was that there is not a natural water source anywhere near this area. Food plot, the greener area, was planted using buck forage oats as a constant food source during deer season. Trail cam showed this to be a good area for morning deer traffic, and the area is located behind the last man-made structure on the property, which is a large high fenced garden. Suburban area deer hunting setup. This is a greenbelt area behind a neighborhood. The blind is set up around 20 yards from the creek, as the creek area is a constant area for deer traffic in the evenings. The T-posts, right, holds a trail camera. A small food plot was also planted along the creek, higher green area near the T-posts and the tree, using buck forage oats as a constant food source. You can also see a deer feeder hanging from the main low tree branch, but it's camouflaged, as is the blind, to keep a low profile. I make it a point to set up my urban hunting spots where they are convenient enough to allow for short, frequent hunts. Ideally, your setup should allow you the access to be able to squeeze in a midweek hunt, which I often do, instead of waiting until only weekends and holidays, as most hunters have to do on larger, more rural properties. Most of my urban spots are within a 15-minute drive from where I live. If I can break away from work for an hour or two, or even end the workday early in some cases, I can usually be in my blind in under 30 minutes from where I am working that day. This ready access allows me to hunt more, and it also improves my odds of being out when deer are moving. When targeting bigger bucks that may only move during the middle of the day, being there when they are moving is the key to putting yourself in the right place at the right time. Essential hunting gear. Before we go into the equipment I use, I wanted to take a moment to examine the time we are living in right now in the outdoor industry. This is an exciting time in history to be an outdoorsman, as I believe that we are in the golden age of the outdoor industry. Although I recommend well-known name brand archery equipment and other gear, there are no manufacturers that I know of that I can suggest to avoid. Competition has weeded the companies with poor quality and subpar products out of the industry for the most part. You have to be among the best to make it in today's hunting and fishing industry. We have the best of the best in the way of hunting gear in our time, and it just keeps getting better and better as time marches on. Whatever equipment you choose, make sure it works well and can withstand the test of time as well as the trials of hunting. I look at both affordability and durability when examining what gear to purchase. Generally, you get what you pay for. The recommendations I make are all based on what has worked well for me for many years, and I do not recommend anything I do not use heavily or that does not work well for me time after time in the field. The equipment I recommend equals a recipe for success time after time for me, and I am confident the gear I suggest will do the same for you as well. If you're already a bow hunter, chances are that you have everything you need for a successful urban hunting adventure. If you are a gun hunter and don't have a bow yet, you will want to invest in a crossbow. You can always invest in a compound bow, but the barrier to entry into archery is usually much easier with a crossbow. Most crossbows are easy to use and you can become proficient with one in a short amount of time. They are about as easy to use as a rifle in most cases. I personally prefer crossbows for my urban hunting adventures since the pop-up blinds I hunt out of are relatively small. Being 6'5" tall, I have about a 30 draw length, which makes bow hunting with a compound bow pretty tight with small blinds. For larger ground blinds, tree stands, and other hunting situations, I use my compound bow. I own a Martin compound bow which I use for all different types of hunting, as well as an older Unyeta Screaming Eagle lever bow, which is like a combination of a recurve and compound bow all rolled into one. As an outdoor writer and TV show co-host, I get questions all the time on what the best bow to buy. It's a hard question to answer. Everyone in the bow hunting community seems to have a favorite brand of bow they trust. Most every manufacturer of compound bows is good, and you can even find many used bows in archery shops and other outdoor sports outlets, as well as even pawn shops. If you would like some tech tips on purchasing a used bow, I have a video on what to look for at www.dustinsprojects.com. If you already own a compound bow, any one suitable for hunting will work. I would highly recommend a draw weight of 45 pounds or more. Many state laws prohibit using a bow with a draw weight lighter than this. In a recent email from one of our viewers, I was asked the question of what draw weight you should aim for as bow hunter. My answer is to find what you can comfortably pull back and hold for a given length of time, say 30 seconds to a minute or more. The joy of compound bows is the let-off, which allows you to hold a bow at full draw for a longer amount of time than with a recurve or long bow. For me, a comfortable draw weight for my compound bow is about 60 pounds, but I worked up the strength to get there. Most bows have 15 to 20 pound of adjustable draw weight. My suggestion is to find what works best for you. When shooting an animal with a bow, you want to be able to comfortably shoot your bow while also having enough power for proper arrow penetration. Find that sweet spot for you if you haven't done so already. Can you use a recurve or longbow in an urban hunting scenario? Sure you can. It's not my first preference though, since you need to make sure you are deadly proficient and have enough power to properly kill your quarry fast. I know many archers who own traditional bows who have trouble with accuracy or having enough power to make a quick and ethical kill. I also know many archers who are very accurate and hunt better with traditional archery equipment than anything else. I have no issues with hunters using traditional archery equipment to hunt. My main concern is a quick recovery of the animal after the shot. This is another reason why I primarily suggest you use a modern compound bow or crossbow for urban hunting scenarios, especially if you are just starting out. Use today's technologies to be as accurate, powerful, and lethal as possible in your outdoor pursuit. The author's Martin Scepter 2 compound bow with an urban 8-point buck. While there are many manufacturers of crossbows, the brand I personally use and trust is Barnett. I own a Barnett Wildcat C5 as well as a Barnett Buck Commander Extreme, BCX, ultra light crossbow, and have taken several deer and wild hogs with both of them. What is nice about the Barnett brand is that you can get an entry-level crossbow, such as the Wildcat C5 for instance, for a decent price, under $400 in most places, or scale up to a faster model with more features, such as the Buck Commander Extreme if you want to spend a little more money. If you are just starting out with a crossbow purchase, Barnett is a fine choice. I have owned these two Barnett crossbows for years and have only the finest review on both of them. Although controversial at times in the bow hunting realm, crossbows level the playing field so that virtually any hunter, regardless of age, size, or disability, can be an accurate bow hunter. I also like crossbows for urban hunting because, in my experience at least, they put game down fast. I have not had but a few deer run over 100 yards when the shot placement was good with a crossbow. You can also almost guarantee enough kinetic energy for a good pass-through shot on a deer, wild hog, or other big game animal. This is vital in urban bow hunting, as you certainly don't want to take chances on losing an animal in your hunt. I must constantly reiterate how important it is to make every shot count in urban hunting situations. Another side note on crossbow hunting. Always, and I mean always, use a rope cocking device designed for your crossbow. I use one designed by Barnett for my 2 crossbows. Cocking a crossbow by hand can set the pressure on the limbs unevenly, throwing your shot off to the left or right of your intended target when you pull the trigger. Using your hands to cock a crossbow can also hurt after a few times of doing it. For the best possible accuracy and ease of use, be sure to use a rope cocking device every time you cock your crossbow. Also, I highly recommend using a monopod or bipod when hunting with a crossbow. Just like in rifle hunting, your shots will most likely be more accurate if you have a steady rest. I cover both compound bow and crossbow shooting fundamentals in a video on my YouTube channel. Broadhead/arrow selection. The selection of broadheads and arrows on the market today is overwhelming. Just about every bow hunter who has been around for a while usually has a preference in what broadheads he uses. I am among that group. While I have tried many different brands and types of broadheads over the years, as many hunters have, I prefer to use a 3-blade mechanical broadhead with a large 1.5 to 2 cut radius, such as the ones made by Grim Reaper broadheads. I use Grim Reapers for a number of reasons. For one, they put down game fast. Secondly, they are very easy to rebuild and use over and over again, making them cost-effective. As long as the ferrule, center core of the broadhead, is not bent or otherwise damaged, you can use them over and over again by replacing the blades and a couple other pieces of hardware. Most all of the deer and other big game animals I have taken in my urban areas have dropped well within 100 yards using the large cut radius broadheads offered by Grim Reaper. For compound bows shooting 60 or more pounds and with a 28 to 30 draw length, I have had great success with the 100 grain Whitetail Special 2 cut radius razor tip broadheads. For crossbows with lower poundage, usually under 300 FPS, I use the 125 grain 1 3/4 cut radius razor tip broadheads. For crossbows like the Buck Commander Extreme that shoot with more power and speed, Grim Reaper makes crossbow rated broadheads that have a stronger spring inside, preventing them from opening prematurely in flight, but still offer 1.5 cut radius. The author's favorite broadheads for urban hunting success. The dilemma in using fixed blade or mechanical broadheads is one that plagues many hunters. You have more inherent accuracy with mechanical broadheads, but there is the risk of them not opening upon entering the target. With fixed blade broadheads you have a guaranteed cut radius and no moving parts, but you also have a limited cut radius. I personally have never had an issue with any of my Grim Reaper's broadheads performing well. They open upon entering an animal every time with no need for O-rings or rubber bands to keep them closed in flight. The success I have had with dozens upon dozens of kills documented on camera speaks for itself. This is why I love these broadheads so much. They do their job and they do it well. If you are still hesitant on using a mechanical broadhead, Grim Reaper also makes a fixed blade broadhead, the Hades. I have not personally used these but have heard nothing but great things about them as far as accuracy and performance go. You can check out all of these broadheads at www.grimreaperbroadheads.com and watch my many hunts with these and other products I recommend at www.dustinsprojects.com under the videos section. Grim Reaper's Hades Fixed Blade Broadheads. There are also many arrows on the market today. Since I film many of my hunts, I am a big fan of using the Luminoc Lumen Arrow. These come in both standard compound bow arrows and crossbow bolts. These arrows are unique as they already have Luminoc lighted arrow nocks installed. These are not among the least expensive arrows and bolts on the market today, but they are among the highest quality arrows and bolts I have ever used. The reason I love using Luminocs is that you get immediate feedback from where your shot went. They only use quality material in manufacturing these arrows and bolts. If you already have compound arrows or crossbow bolts, You can always buy Luminox aftermarket and install them. Whichever way you choose to go, I think it is very important to get immediate feedback in urban hunting situations so you know where your shot went and where the animal ran after the shot. Illuminated arrow nocks also make retrieving your arrow or bolt easier, especially in low light situations. Burt Coyote Luminox Lumen arrows and gold tip arrows and bolts are a great asset for urban hunting. Although there are many manufacturers of arrows and crossbow bolts, among my favorites are those made by Victory Archery, Gold Tip, and Easton. In my personal compound bow setup, I shoot Easton Epic arrows with Luminox installed. In crossbow hunting, I use either Lumen arrow bolts or Barnett brand bolts which are produced by Easton. Whatever brand you choose, once again, go with a brand name and make sure the arrow is the right fit for your draw length, draw weight, and overall archery setup. A good archery pro shop will help you with this at no additional charge in most cases. Most crossbow manufacturers have a preference of what length of bolt to use. Read that owner's manual to make sure you are feeding your crossbow the right bolts. Game cameras. Another piece of gear I use all the time when hunting urban areas is a trail camera. I prefer to use a trail camera to pattern deer and know when the prime times are to hunt. For instance, my creek stand blind has deer coming by like clockwork every evening, and one of my other stands in another area is better for morning hunts. Trail cameras are your eyes in the woods when you can't be there in person. Used correctly, they help you predict the best times to hunt and identify what is coming through your area. This past season, I killed one of the nicest bucks I have ever taken in an urban hunt scenario because I patterned him and put myself in the right place at the right time. Another good use for trail cameras is to scout potential hunting areas before you set up a stand or blind. As we talked about before, you want to put yourself in the right place at the right time, and game cameras can help you do this well. There are many wonderful trail cameras available today. The ones I personally use are from Wild Game Innovations. These are more affordable than many cameras on the market today, and they have worked great over the years I have used them. Ground blinds. Pop-up blinds are probably the most user-friendly and least expensive tool to use on urban property. They are usually low-key and can be set up in a matter of minutes. Ground blinds are the way I hunt when urban hunting, since the areas hunt do not have any trees that will support a tree stand, and there really is no reason to have an elevated blind. In woodlots and other heavily wooded areas, a tripod stand or tree stand might be the best fit. It just depends on where you are hunting and how you want to set up your hunting area. I try not to wear camouflage clothing when hunting ground blinds, since most ground blinds have a dark or black color inside the blind. Since you always want to match the background of your hunting area, especially in bow hunting, I try to dress ninja style, in all black, when I hunt in ground blinds. Some camo is alright, but you want to be as invisible as possible inside your blind. If you are hunting using a tree stand, tripod stand, or even a natural hunting blind that you created yourself, you will obviously want to dress in camouflage suited to match your background. Another good consideration if you are using a ground blind like a pop-up is to keep your movement inside the blind to a bare minimum. I have been busted more times by deer catching sight of me moving into position as they approach my hunting setup than just about another factor. For this reason, I keep all of the windows in the blind closed, except for my shooting window, and only have a small space open in the other windows so I can peek out without being spotted. This is extremely important. Many hunters I have taken with me are bewildered that urban deer and other game get spooked by movement in the hunting blind, figuring that they are used to people. I can assure you, however, once you have shot a few deer out of a blind a few times, the other deer in the area begin to be aware of any danger signs in the hunting area. Scent elimination and cover scents. Most bow hunters would agree that scent elimination is one of the vital considerations you should make in any bow hunting setup. Urban deer and other wildlife usually do not mind human scent as much as deer and other wild game in more rural areas, but it is still an important consideration. It is important to reduce and eliminate as many scent-causing elements as possible in your hunting environment through scent elimination sprays or cover scents. One of the cover scents I use is genuine Mexican vanilla, which you can find online or in Mexican food markets. Pour some of this into a spray bottle and you have a great cover scent that is much cheaper than what you can find in the sporting goods store. Even with all of these factors, deer can sometimes still smell you. In my hunting experience, it is usually the mature does that will set the alarms off, and the rest of the herd in the areas usually listen to her recommendation. Once she blows and goes, the rest of the herd within earshot of her will most likely be following her lead soon after. If you can keep the mama does in the dark by keeping your scent eliminated or masked and your movements down to a minimum when deer are in the area, you will be in good shape. Tracking equipment. One of the best pieces of advice I have ever received about tracking deer is to use H2O2, also known as hydrogen peroxide, in a spray bottle to look for blood. Simply get a spray bottle, pour some hydrogen peroxide in it and broadcast spray an area. Blood will naturally foam when peroxide contacts it. This is one of the simplest low-cost tracking methods I have ever learned, and it works very well. Another tool you need to have for the early morning and late evening hours is a good flashlight, as this is also a tool to help in tracking and recovering a deer or other wild game after the shot. Making the most of what you have. As we have discovered together, you don't need a huge tract of land to hunt on, and you can find urban and suburban areas to hunt in many different shapes and forms in our great country. Any little island of cover can be good, as even just a few acres of woods or thickets can hold a surprising number of deer or other wildlife. In fact, hunting such undersized patches is like looking for needles in smaller haystacks. The fewer places deer have to hide, the greater your chances of seeing them consistently. Practicing for perfection. I constantly reiterate practicing with the equipment you choose to use, but I make a special emphasis on practicing for urban hunting situations. Most of the time, with the setup recommendations I have made, I advise practicing at around 20 yards. The quality of your practice time is much more important than the quantity. Prior to hunting season, I try to squeeze off 10 practice arrows or bolts a day, sometime even less if I am pressed for time. You can fatigue yourself and lose accuracy potential if you shoot too much. Even if all you have time for is 1 or 2 well-placed, well-planned arrows or bolts a day, you are head and shoulders above many hunters in the field. One shot is all you may get. Make it count. If you choose mechanical broadheads, consider using the practice head included with your broadheads if there was one. If you are using fixed blade broadheads, consider practicing with that broadhead enough times to where you feel confident in your accuracy and resharpen your broadheads before you go out to hunt. If you are having issues with your equipment or would like someone to help you get more proficient with your equipment, reach out to your local archery pro shop or sporting goods store and let them examine your equipment or watch you shoot. Accuracy and quick kills are essential in urban bow hunting. You don't want to risk losing game. Always take the approach in making sure your equipment is in the best shape possible and you are in the best shape possible to make an accurate and lethal shot time after time. In closing, I encourage you to go the roads less traveled and find new places to hunt that don't cost a fortune. Offer your time and service to a deserving landowner and take some meat home. If you are lucky, you might even take a trophy that you can brag about to your hunting buddies while they ask in awe and amazement, "Where did you say you went hunting?" Remember, the world of hunting is full of opportunity. You have to go after potential opportunities in order to be able to take advantage of what is out there. Thank you for taking this journey with me in this book. If you want to see some of my own personal urban hunting adventures, complete with all the gear I recommend using, I have several hunting videos available for you to watch on my website at www.dustinsprojects.com under the video section. Obey the rules, hunt respectfully and responsibly, be safe, and have fun out there. About the author. Dustin Von Warnke is an avid outdoorsman and an authority in sales and marketing with a specialization in the outdoor industry. He started building websites in the late 1990s. During his college years and shortly after, he authored and self-published 3 paperback books both in fiction and nonfiction. Additionally, Warnke has served as a motivational speaker and master teacher and worked with numerous small businesses in sales, marketing, website development, desktop publishing and business consulting with his company, Warnke Enterprises. He earned a bachelor's degree from Texas Lutheran University in 2002. Go Bulldogs! In 2013 and 2014, Dustin authored and published 3 outdoor industry ebooks through Warnke Enterprises on various topics. Educating young outdoorsmen and women as well as adults who are new to the sport of hunting, fishing, bowfishing, and other outdoor adventures is Warnke's passion. He has hosted hundreds of YouTube videos, as well as bi-weekly podcasts for numerous years. In addition, Dustin also has served as the marketing director and co-host for Mac and Prowler's Coyote Tales TV show for nearly 9 years and has filmed and been featured in several TV shows featuring product reviews as well as rifle, shotgun, and archery tech tip segments. He also films, edits, and produces his own hunting, fishing, and other outdoor adventures which can be seen on his YouTube channel. Many of his video productions have been featured on regional and national television networks in the USA, including the newest network he is pro staff for, Pride Outdoor Network. He served as the associate publisher for Texas Fish and Game magazine in 2019 and has authored several feature articles in this publication over the past 7 years. He also served as contributing editor for Texas Lakes and Bays, a best-selling fishing atlas, published by Texas Fish and Game, which is currently the largest independently owned outdoor magazine in the nation and the largest and most popular outdoor publication in the state of Texas. Dustin hosted the Best of the Outdoors podcast from 2015 until the end of 2019, most of those years under the FANG umbrella of media platforms. 2 of Dustin's feature articles were also featured in the first edition of Big Game Illustrated's digital magazine, Big Game Online. In addition, Dustin also has articles featured in the Lone Star Bowhunters Association magazine as well as Legacy Outfitters magazine. Dustin's goal in all he does is to inspire others to do great things in the outdoors and to live with love, joy, purpose, meaning and significance.
To learn more about Dustin Von Warnke's ebooks, paperback books, outdoor podcasts, outdoor TV shows, online course, blogs and articles, please visit www.dustinsprojects.com.